All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Derrick. I'm the Global Chief Medical Officer at World Travel Protection, a travel risk management and medical and security assistance company. Bit of background for myself. I'm a professor of critical care medicine. I've traveled to over 65 countries around the world. I've worked on ground in remote corners of the world, from the jungles of Africa to the remote islands in PNG. I'm also a disaster specialist, so a lot of my work evolves around understanding healthcare capacity in resource-limited settings. I've been involved in industrial chemical spills offshore, but apart from really responding to an event, whether it's a big scale or whether it's just an individual getting sick, a big part of what I do is understanding how we can mitigate these risks better. And that translates well to what we do at World Travel Protection. We support travelers and workers all around the world, whether it's an executive working out of a foreign office or a FIFO worker working in the mines in Asia. We have a very wide network of accredited medical service providers who can respond to any medical emergencies as well. But it's really not about just responding to something. You know, when you're responding, by the time you're responding, the trauma has already happened. It's a lot more about how we can help you risk mitigate these concerns, right? Before you even send your staff away, I can actually start identifying issues at your destination and help minimize some of these risks and pre-plan a plan A and a plan B when things go south. So it's sort of very cliche, the old saying of fail to prepare, prepare to fail, but it stands true. This paper we wrote on industrial disasters last year, where we retrospectively analyzed thousands of large-scale industrial events. And you can see the sort of breakdown in the next slide. You know, explosions, collapses. I have the paper. If you want a copy, I'm happy to forward to you. But the stats aside, really the take-home message is these things happen. Whether it's a large-scale or individual event, these things happen. And what it really highlighted when I was doing this research was a need for, yes, better response planning, but also better risk mitigation strategies. A lot of these things are preventable through education and better preparedness. And the things that we can't prevent, we can risk mitigate. We can minimize the impact when it does happen. Having IMARC plans that are up to date and contemporary and relevant to your unique risks is important. Having your plans interrogated by security and medical specialists is important before your worker even deploys and before they fall sick or get injured. Being prepared isn't just about having a medical assistance that will respond. It's about having good pre-travel risk management. And there's no better team than disaster specialists because that's what we do. That is our specialist skill set. And ultimately, I'm going to go one more slide. Are you going to talk on this? And ultimately, even if you don't sort of understand health, about reputational impact, you will have a care about the costs. And multiple studies have shown, at least in the disaster world, that for every dollar you spend in risk mitigation, you save about $6 down the line. And I think this is applicable whether it's on a big scale or whether it's on an individual basis. So even if you take away the finance, you're just preventing, you know, injury risks, outcomes, etc. I'll leave you with Rodger Cook, who will go through some of these security aspects.
There we go, the slide's slightly out of order. Good morning. As the introduction, my name is Rodger. I'm the head of Global Security Services for World Travel Protection. I've been in the mining industry for the last nearly 18 years, having worked in Papua New Guinea, Madagascar, Zambia, and Indonesia. So very happy to be here today, and today we're going to go to Madagascar. Has anyone been to the Ambatavi mine in Madagascar? Okay, so I've got to tell the truth. All right. I was going to tell a story about how me and the lemurs saved the world, but it didn't quite happen that way. So as you can see there, we went through a cyclonic episode on the mine site. The thing with cyclones, for the most part, is there's some preparation that you can do in advance. They form in a usual pattern that you can map, and usually you've got a few days. In this instance, the mine site had been through numerous cyclones in the past, and there was a well-worn process that we used to prepare the facility for this event. Obviously, when cyclones hit land, or they land wherever you are, they're a little bit more unpredictable than when they are out at sea. So we can map the patterns, but in this instance, the cyclone landed a lot further south than they normally do, pretty much right on top of our operation. My roles and responsibility at that time as the head of security was to be bunkered down in the admin building, which was not cyclone rated, while everybody else was in their accommodation in the cyclone rated buildings. I had with me my security team, the emergency response team, and key maintenance staff, which was there once the situation was able to be cleared for any support that the mine site needed. In this instance, like I said, the cyclone hit a little bit further south than they normally do, and it hovered over our position for quite some time. Now, for those that have been through a cyclone, you'll understand that those ones that sit and churn can cause just as much damage as the high-speed ones that sweep through. And in this instance, it caused significant damage to the mine site, to the processing facility, which is located at Tamatave on the east coast of Madagascar. For those who may know Ambatavi, the processing facility looks like it's had a cyclone go through it every year for the last 25. It's quite a battered and beaten up site. This obviously didn't help it much. So we sat through the cyclone, it passed through, the Ida storm went through, then the second phase came through. And the main command, or the main radio control room, also had our alarm centre in there as well. We had a ammonia storage facility located just on the edge of the Tamatave town, and the alarm panel lit up like a Christmas tree. We started to lose insulation panels. The heat signature was not looking particularly good, and this was during the cyclone. Once the cyclone cleared and we were able to get there, we sent out the small team of security, emergency response, and the maintenance teams to go and check on that facility. So having the preparation, like Dr. Tin spoke about, enabled us to have the right teams in the right location. Vehicles parked in numerous different spots in case different roads were cut off or lost completely, which we did lose a couple of roads. So it was that prior preparation, based on the experience that we'd had with previous cyclones, that helped us to respond in a really quick manner. And for those of you who might have seen the news recently with the 2 hurricanes that went through Orlando, the second one in particular, there was a response capability from one of the police, an emergency response, that had all their vehicles parked under the one shelter shed, and it collapsed on top of all their vehicles, which obviously delayed their response. So cyclones, again, the preparation is key, and you have to think about multiple concepts. So for us, we were able to get through to where the ammonia storage facility was at the time. Very difficult to get through the road, down power lines, down power poles, trees, corrugated iron all over the place, but we safely managed to get there and check the facility and make it safe. But of course, the risk from that incident didn't stop there, and it went on for many, many months. Initially, the damage to the facility, we communicated to everybody outside of the business that we would be up and running within 4 weeks. Now, those of us in mining know that 4 weeks is 12, and then that can extend out for indefinite periods of time. So our initial communication to stakeholders was quite solid. The plan that we had, we got on with, and started trying to return to full operation. The delays during that return were not then communicated. And that's where we had an issue around social license to operate. As you all know, in the communication space, when you create a vacuum, someone will fill it. So the information that was being spread around by various stakeholders was that our ponds were damaged, that we'd leaked some of our processed water and chemicals into the local water system, that somehow the mountain of sulphur that we used in the process had been picked up in the clouds and spread all over Madagascar. None of which, of course, was true, but it did really impact the operation, negative publicity, protests at the gate, and all these sorts of things. So your activities and your preparation does not stop straight after the incident, or even when you think you've communicated sufficiently. You always have to be aware of what's being said and what's being spoken about outside of your communication channels. So in this instance, we eventually returned back probably about 3 or 4 months later to full production. And the key thing to understand here with cyclones as well, that most of the incidents and injuries that occurred was during the cleanup and during the repair work, which is generally the case when we see a cyclone go through, Vanuatu or other parts of the world like that, where it's very prone to cyclones. It's usually in the cleanup where you have people getting hurt and near misses. So it's important to understand that preparation and that focus needs to be maintained. Now for us, we're very lucky on the mine site, no serious injuries, and we're able to get back relatively quickly. Any questions on the preparation and the work that went into supporting the response to this? Now, as Dr. Tin said at the start, we are a travel risk management company. Obviously, we provide security and medical consulting services to this industry, whether you're going into a new environment, whether you have an existing operation, whether you need to understand your stakeholders, you need to understand the security and medical risk of the environment you're operating in. And as we know, that evolves. I remember being at one of these things about 8, 9 years ago, and it was all about Ebola. The room would be 10 times full. We were talking about Ebola 8 years ago. Now, of course, we've got things like monkeypox and these things which are ever evolving, and we need to be in front of those for our operational staff. One of the ways that we do this in supporting our travellers and our expatriates is to educate the individuals, their families, but as well as the organisation to understand the risk exposure they've got, not just for their travels, but also for their projects. And as we know, risks evolve, and it's important to stay on top of those. So World Travel Protection looks after those organisations to understand, to educate them on those risks. When they're travelling, we know where they are at all times, and if the situation evolves or changes, then we're able to communicate to them that it's changed and then provide support where required. So this works as much for a traveller as it does for a ring-fenced site in northwest Zambia or in Latin America. So very happy to work inside the resource industry. We have a lot of clients, particularly in Africa and Latin America and in Indonesia, that utilise our services on a day-to-day basis. So that concludes the presentation. Again, preparation is key. Understanding the resources you have available to you and understanding that the situation does evolve. If you can prepare, you can respond, and then you can deal with the situation as it occurs and hopefully mitigate any further risk or damage to your operation, your reputation, or your people.
Hello, they're on. In terms of the data that you're drawing from to inform those processes and decisions, is that local assets on the ground? Is it sort of open source data that you can access publicly? How are you sort of informing those processes?
Yeah, we have multiple data sources. We utilise a couple of tier 1 providers for country intelligence, city intelligence, but then we have local providers with really granular knowledge of the environment. There's a lot of data that you can tap into through government that's open source. But again, my team and our organisation have people all over the world, clients all over the world that we call upon and go, this is happening in your backyard, what do you know? Or this is what we know, can you confirm? And really, we've been at it for 30 plus years. We're actually part of the Zurich Insurance Group, so we're not a small organisation. We've been white labelled for 30 years. You might know us as Customer Care, Chubb Assist. White label's great for commercials, it's terrible for branding. So our networks are really well established. Our global care network, which is what we refer to it as, has doctors, nurses, clinics, hospitals, pharmacies, but as well as that, we've got legal, we've got security, we've got investigators, we have intelligence providers. So it's very, very broad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on security and medical response and how we can support your travellers and or your sites? No? Thank you.